The germs which are in him for the possibilities of acquiring pure reason have not the time, during the process of his subsequent formation, to become atrophied to the very root. And further, it sometimes also happens that for the subsequent completing formation of such a three-brained being there, newly arisen in the said relatively normal conditions, his responsible guide during his preparatory age for responsible existence is such a three-brained being as had before this, also of course by chance, already been completely formed in the same way, and in the functioning of whose waking consciousness, thanks to the frequent actualization in his presence of being partikdog duty, there had participated the data which had remained whole in his subconscious for the engendering of the divine impulse of conscience. And so, this same guide, being aware with the whole of his being of the important significance of his responsibility taken upon himself in relation to this new being, who has, in the said manner, only as yet reached his preparatory age, begins, according to conscience, impartially to create for his Oskiano every kind of what are called inner and outer factors for the perceiving of corresponding impressions, in order to crystallize in his common presence all those data, the totality of which alone can give to the three-brained being who has reached responsible age the power to be Svoli Brunolnian, or as your favorites there on earth would say, the potency not to be identified with and not to be affected by externals through one's inevitable inherent passions. And this being impulse engendered in the being with these data can alone help him to acquire the possibility of a free and impartial constatation of all true phenomenon appearing in the cosmic results around him. Here it is very opportune to repeat once again that on most planets of our megalocosmos, on which three-brained beings arise and exist, there is an oft-repeated sentence formulated in the following words: Our common Father Endlessness is only the maker of a three-centered being. The genuine creator, however, of his essence during the period of his preparatory existence is his Oskianotsner, namely he whom your favorites call tutor or teacher. And so, even during the last century, it occasionally happened there that such a one from among your favorites who had already reached responsible age, completely formed and prepared in the said manner for external perceptions, constating by chance a certain law-conformable particularity among the cosmic results around him, began to study it in detail and from every aspect, and having ultimately attained, after long persevering labors, to some objective truth or other, initiated other beings around him and similar to him into this truth. Now, my boy, listen to how these peculiar three-brained beings first became aware of this fundamental cosmic law of the sacred Heptaparaparshinokh, and how the totality arose there of all the information concerning its various details thoroughly cognized by previous beings, and which had become, after having been transmitted from generation to generation, the possession of every subsequent three-brained being of this planet of yours, which could enable them to cognize this information also. And likewise, listen to what and when, thanks to always the same strangeness of their psyche, there resulted from all this. I wish to explain to you about this in even as great detail as possible, with all the sequence of the historical course of development, both as regards the constatation of the cognizance concerning the sacred law, as well as the gradual forgetting about it, because such information relating to all this will greatly help you. First of all, to elucidate those, as you express it, unimportant details of this sacred law, which you have not yet completely transubstantiated in your reason. And secondly, thanks to these elucidations of mine, you will likewise learn that among the number of your favorites, even the contemporary ones, such responsible beings do occasionally appear in the sphere of genuine learned beings. And assuming that the other three-brained beings there existed more or less normally, then thanks to the impartial and modest conscious efforts of these beings, genuine objective learning might arise and gradually develop also on this ill-fated planet, as a result of which that welfare might be obtained also for them, which the three-brained beings of all the other planets of our great megalocosmos have long ago deservedly enjoyed. In the beginning, during the period when the three-brained beings of that planet had in themselves the organ Kundabuffer, it was of course out of the question that the beings of the earth could have learned about any cosmic truths. But afterwards, when the functioning of this maleficent organ which they had in their presences was destroyed, and when, in consequence, their psyche became free and became, so to say, their own and individual, it was just from then on that all kinds of stories began concerning their relatively sane being-mentation. The perceiving and cognizing of the fundamental cosmic law of the sacred Heptaparaparshinokh by the common presences of these three-brained beings who have taken your fancy began for the first time on the continent Atlantis, at that period when, do you remember, I already told you, certain beings there understood by themselves that something not quite right proceeded in them? And when they themselves discovered that they had certain possibilities of being able to destroy this something not quite right, and of becoming such as they ought to be. It was just at that period of the flow of time when certain of them began to observe those, according to sane being-mentation, abnormal functionings which proceeded in their common presences, and to search out the causes of these abnormalities, and to try to find every kind of possibility for removing them from themselves. And when many branches of real science there had reached a high degree of development, that among the number of those who were seriously interested in this, as it was then called, most necessary functioning of reason, there was that terrestrial three-brained being by the name Theophany, who was the first to lay a rational foundation for the subsequent development of this branch of genuine science. As I later chanced to learn, this same Theophany was once pouring a certain mixture onto a marble slab to dry, consisting of the extract of the plant then called Patatuk, pine resin, and cream of the milk of the then famous what were called Chenonian goats, so that after its hardening, a mastic should be obtained, used for chewing after eating. When for the first time he noticed that in whatever way and in whatever quantity this mixture was poured onto that marble slab, it always, concentrating in the same way, assumed after the final cooling a form composed of 7 definite plane surfaces. This fact, unexpectedly constated by this Theophany, greatly astonished him, and the intensive wish arose in his common presence to elucidate to his reason the radical causes of this law conformableness still unknown to him. And therefore, from that time on, he began to repeat the same thing, but already with a conscious aim. Shortly after, still at the beginning of the investigations which Theophany undertook, His friends, other learned beings of that time with whom he shared the beginnings